there. Hopefully my fan is not blasting at the audio. Looks like I've got a good mic here. So, oh, hey, Druid. I didn't know if you were here. Okay, I think it's probably my fan. That's why it's a little bit low. Is that any better? I may have to turn it back on. Y'all, it's not the heat, it's the humidity. Okay. So yeah, happy Monday. It's Memorial Day. So it's a holiday in the U.S. and I kind of refreshed my memory on the details of Memorial Day. Not that I didn't remember what it was for, but I was trying to remember, when did it become a federal holiday here? And I'm always surprised, and I knew this, but I'm always surprised when I see it. Memorial Day did not become a federal holiday in the United States until 1971, which is interesting when you hear people talk about wearing white before Memorial Day. It's like, it's only been a thing since 1971. So, although I did read that there were Memorial Day type of events or observations as long ago as the Civil War. But it became the federal holiday in 1971. And I know that there are other Memorial Days in other countries, particularly the UK, Canada. They're days of remembrance. And especially I think in Canada and the UK, the poppy is a symbol of remembrance, and it is actually in the U.S. as well. You just don't see it as often. But like the not the VA, but the I'm trying to think. Oh gosh, maybe it's the VFW. One of those veteran organizations does use the poppies. You just don't see it very often. True. Right up to Memorial Day is outdated. People don't even wear underwear anymore. You've got a very good point. But it's really funny because I remember my friend telling this story in high school. He was a very good friend of mine, and his parents were actually good family friends, and they lived in the same neighborhood as me. And I just remember being really enamored with his parents because his dad was a professor and his mom was just really cool, like the coolest, nicest mom. And he told me the story about how they met on a college campus, and that his mom was enamored with his dad because he was wearing a white belt before Memorial Day. And I was like, if this holiday didn't become a national thing until 1971, I was probably right around the time that my friend's parents met. I'm like, this story doesn't hold a lot of water, I don't think. Anyway, but I always like to make a good-natured, good faith stab at observing Memorial Day properly. Here in the U.S., it tends to be a big furniture, mattress, and car sales weekend. People have cookouts, barbecues, all that stuff. It's considered the beginning of summer in the U.S., which is all well and good. But honestly, it was meant to observe and commemorate, memorialize people that lost their lives serving their country. So it's more appropriate to thank a service member for their service and to fly the American flag at half-staff and pay attention and memorialize the people that have lost their lives. And, I think that there are plenty of organizations that are doing that today. A friend of mine in the past has done the wreath memorials at Arlington Cemetery, which is kind of a big deal there for Memorial Day and Veterans Day. So anyway, I just wanted to, kind of mention it. It's, I don't mean it to be a downer or anything. And I mean, yeah, like Druid's saying, it's a big day for, all the things, and pool's open and kids are getting ready to be done with school and all that stuff. So it's always fun to, have this long weekend and do all that stuff. But I always like to make the point, never forget that what this day is really about. And, I'm not I'm not a big fan of foreign wars, but I do have a lot of respect for people that join the military, give their lives, and certainly people that didn't come back are, my heart is very open for them. So anyway, don't wish people happy Memorial Day. It's not supposed to be a happy day. It's a day of remembrance. But I can wish you a happy Monday and a happy long weekend. And I hope you're not sweating as much as me. I've been watching the 10-day forecast, and we're supposed to get this cold front coming in. I think it's like tonight or tomorrow. And the temperature's going to drop. It's going to be in the 70s. And so I'm like holding out. I'm like, I don't want to have to uncover the air conditioner, do all the things, and then have it, not even use it for a bit. So I'm holding out. With this humidity, though, act like I haven't lived on the East Coast for 50 years. And anyway, the terrible, terrible, parts of summer that, it's all sweatiness and stuff. So, a couple of announcements. Hey, Molly. So a couple of announcements. On Thursday this week, there will be no stream. And I'm so sorry I forgot to mention this last week. And, I think you guys can probably survive. But I just wanted to mention it. I'm going to be at the Penn Dry Goods Show up in Pennsburg, Pennsylvania. It is at a museum called the Schwenkfelder Center. And the Schwenkfelders are a whole story. They were a persecuted, I believe they were Anabaptists, much like the Amish and the Mennonites. But they were a very small sect in, I want to say it was like the 1600s in part of the world that today I guess is like Austria, Germany, like that whole area. Back then it was the Austro-Hungarian Empire or whatever. But anyway, there were a small group of this religious sect, and they, I want to say they were in, like, I don't know, some kind of pogroms in sort of Eastern Central Europe. And so by the 1700s, they came here, I think in 2 waves, if I remember correctly. And they settled in Pennsylvania, much like, some of the Amish, the folks that came here. And, back then they were, just regular citizens. I don't know that there's really anybody that's still observing the religious practices of the Schwenkfelders. But there are lots of descendants that live in that area. And my guess is the Schwenkfelder Center originally started as kind of a place to show the Schwenkfelder stuff, and they have a whole genealogy center and all that kind of stuff. So, I think it was really about the people of that area. And now they do all kinds of Pennsylvania-centric stuff. So it's a very cool place. It's a shame that it's like a little over 2 hours from my house, because I would go to a lot more things there. But it's just, it's a little over 2 hours, and so it's kind of like, ugh, it's a drive. So on Thursday, my mom's going to come, and we're going to drive up there on Thursday. And then the Penn Dry Goods Show ends up being like, they have little 1-hour lectures. And I say little, I mean, they're cool stuff. Really cool topics. And, you would recognize some of the names if you if you pay attention to AQSG stuff and Six Know-It-Alls and all that kind of stuff. You would recognize names. So anyway, the lectures are 1 hour each, and oh gosh, I want to say there's probably 16 or 18 of them over several days. And then they have like an antique show that goes along with it, and it's all, very focused on quilts, needlework tools, samplers, antique clothing and textiles. I know last year there was a mother and daughter team called the Button Babes, and so they had all these vintage and antique buttons and just cool stuff, the kind of things that we love. So that's what I'm going to do on Thursday through Saturday. So I will be back next Monday. Of course, Jill and I also have, our usual Tuesday night thing. We'll do that tomorrow night. So that's the deal for this week. And I'll re-announce at the end here so nobody forgets. Also, what is going to be starting on Saturday, so this Saturday, June 1st, is the Wither Wax Along. And it is this quilt, the Mary Wither Wax quilt. And these are some pictures of the parts of it. This was a 19th century heirloom quilt that our friend Dawn Ronigan, who Jill and I just recently finished reading her book through Quilt Nerding, and she found this quilt. It is a odd quilt. It's a cool quilt. And so I decided to do a 100-day project with this quilt. And lots of people, Molly included, have jumped on to stitch along with me. And it's going to be fun. They're small blocks. It's applique, but it's not difficult applique. It's kind of fun hand sewing. So if you're interested, if anybody out there is interested and you want to jump in, the book, if you ordered it today, you could probably have it by the weekend. Because Collector with a Needle, which is Dawn's company, her husband does the shipping and he ships pretty fast. So that is Dawn's Etsy shop, Collector with a Needle, and you could order the book or you can order the PDF. So I kind of went back and forth on whether I wanted the book or the PDF, but I kind of wanted the book because it's a really nice book. So anyway, we'll be starting that on Saturday, June 1st. It'll go through, I think it's September 9th. Oh, God, I have to turn this fan back on. Can you see my face? I'm glistening. Turn your volume up. I gotta have air. But anyway, so it's going to be fun, and it's very low key, and I'm going to stitch a block a day, but nobody that's joining me has to stitch a block a day. If they don't want to or they cannot. So yeah, it's a beautiful book, and it's, spiral bound. Yes, you can fold it out flat. If you want to blow up the size of any of the blocks, very easy to lay it flat on a copy machine or a printer scanner. So yeah, so that's coming up. That'll be fun. And then I thought I would give you guys a little bit of an update on my my Artist James Scholar project, which I feel like I work on it constantly. I work on it every day. I want to say like week before last. Maybe there was one day last week where I didn't work on it, but I mean, it's like literally every single day. I have the thing out on my desk or my workspace or whatever, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, but I wanted to give you guys an update because I said you guys are going on this journey with me. So the quilt itself is done. I have this one last little piece that I have to stitch. I'd forgotten that I put the Velcro that holds it all together. And then I had to add some stitching. So I have to finish stitching this little piece right here. But as you can see, it is probably front, back, and all. It is probably a little smaller than, say, a twin size quilt. I think if I stretched out all of the applique and stuff I did, it's probably about a twin size quilt's worth. And it is not quilted, it's tied. You can see, like, there's a tie right there. Because the substrate I have in here is not batting, it's actually a foam stabilizer. And I think Pellon makes it, but I used a Bosal because it just is what I had. And I ended up having to order some extra and I made sure that it was the same weight. But there's going to be boning that goes into the binding. These are channels in addition to being binding. And so this whole long strip will be one continuous round, and it's got a twist in it, so it's a Mobius strip. So there's an aspect of this, not necessarily for display, but just kind of for the portfolio aspect of it, where I'm going to make a little video. I was going to do it this morning, and I wanted to finish that last bit of stitching, and well, we know how best intentions go. But I'm going to kind of have it on a reel so that you can see kind of a video of the whole thing. But you can see they're quotes. And it's a lot of other people's pieced blocks, my own pieced blocks. There's some embroidery in here. There's a lot going on. And so, get back over there. How does this all come together? Well, let me show you. The quilting of the quilt piece was enjoyable. The engineering I've had to put into the next part was not so much, but. So what we have here is a Smith Coronas Electric, and taking one of these apart was absolutely mind-blowing. It was very difficult. I still have, right now, these are still held together with painter's tape, because I still have to deal with the innards. But basically there's a keyboard here, and it's a squishy keyboard. So when you push the buttons, there are going to be little sound modules under there. Basically, if you think about the things that are inside of a Build-A-Bear, and you squeeze it and it talks to you, that's essentially what these little snippets. And so you saw the quotes, and there's snippets of those quotes you would be able to listen to by pushing these marked buttons. So I have to figure out the engineering of that is the last piece I have to do. And instead of a regular old roller here, we got the rolling pin. So this will strap in and hold the quilt down. And there are 2 typewriters. So yeah, this has been my life, is dealing with these typewriters. And honestly, it's been a good project. I've learned some things in terms of the engineering part. I'm sure I've told you guys, when I was in art school, I started off in sculpture, and I can work with power tools. I don't love to. So whenever it comes down to something where I have to build and engineer, I get ugh. So yeah, I'm kind of glad that this has not involved any woodworking or anything really complex. So anyway, those are the pieces and parts. Fingers crossed it will be done next week. My goal was to have them done, to have everything done. I keep saying them because I'm thinking of these typewriters, but they'll have the whole piece done by Wednesday, and that's not going to happen because life. But my goal is to have it all done by next week, and it's really just bits and pieces that I have to put the whole thing together. So anyway, that's an update on that. And again, you guys kind of given me the juice, the mojo to do this thing. So I truly appreciate that. Everybody here has given me some confidence and some, I don't know, the drive, the peer pressure. I don't know. Obviously I have to get this project done because I've been awarded a scholarship. But being able to share even just little bits and pieces of it is pretty exciting. So anyway, as soon as I have the textile talk information, I will let you guys know about that. I still don't have the details, but that will be coming up. A textile talk, me on a textile talk. Can you, I can't even. I'm excited, but I'm just it's still, Hey, Kate. So, what else? Thank you, Kate. We love our little butterick lady. She cracks me up. Every time I see that, it cracks me up. So, but thank you, Kate. Oh, Molly, thank you. You're the best. You guys, you're the best. Oh, man, Kate, you're on a 9-month streak. 9 months! Oh, my gosh! And I guess I've been doing this for a little over that amount of time. I think I'm kind of hitting about a year now, I think. Gosh. Isn't that crazy? I can look at my stats and actually say, but yeah, that just time goes by so fast, and right? So let's get to the content. I wanted to share a little bit about long arming for a couple reasons. One, when we did our quilt gossip, which I'm accepting quilt gossip submissions. Let me grab that link. And the gist of a quilt gossip is getting together, talking about a quilt. But if you are interested, if you have a quilt that you would like to submit, and we'll do this online quilt study of it, you could submit it through that link. I have it goes to a form, and all the instructions are there, so I won't beat the dead horse. But when we did our quilt gossip, I guess it's been week before last now, some information got truncated in one of the submissions, and so I wanted to make sure that I gave that person their due time, and I gave you all the information. Well, as it turns out, as you may know, this quilt that I have to show was submitted by our friend Dee Marie, and it was quilted by her sister, who is a long armer. And because we brought it up, and Drew had asked the question, what is the deal with long arming? Like, how kind of, like, does it work? How long does it take? Like, all that stuff. So Dee Marie answered some questions, and she sent us a link that we can watch. It's a 20-minute video, and we're not going to watch the whole thing because it gets into it's some interesting stuff, but it gets into a whole nother topic, which is the cost. And that is a great topic of discussion. I don't want to do it today. So we're going to watch a snippet of the video just to kind of get an idea. If you've never seen a long arm doing its thing, it's interesting. And then, so I'll give you the link to this video too. But first of all, I wanted to show the quilt again, and then show you some things that Dee Marie sent me. A couple of things. So let me scooch over to my other screen to show you this. So this is the quilt that Dee Marie sent for our quilt study, and this is just a stunning quilt. It's a pretty simple pattern, and I can't remember what this block is. Or actually, you know what? This is the one that's a sampler. I don't remember what any of these blocks are. But they're so cool because it's all of these different diamond shapes and stuff. I was going to say, I thought maybe that was snail trail, but not quite. I don't know, maybe it is. Anyway, so, that's all. It's like a sampler, right? And then she quilted in all of this stuff with sunflowers. These big medallion sunflowers, and the leaves, and this beautiful trailing vine, and then the vine of leaves there, and that inner border. Beautiful stuff. And so let me read you what she sent about this, because it got truncated. So let me find the right thing. Okay. So the deal with this quilt is that those blocks, the sampler blocks, were blocks that were given to Dee Marie's sister, who is a professional long armer. These blocks were given to her. They're, I guess, antique and vintage blocks. And so they were put together. And she says that the filler stitches, which is this pebbling, this little pebbly stuff, which is so amazing to me. I mean, I think that's a fairly difficult stitch. I think, if I remember correctly, I've taken a couple classes on home machine quilting, not necessarily long arm, but just how to do these patterns. And that little pebble is it's a little bit of a challenge. So what she said is that, let's see, the filler stitches were done freehand. She does mention the batting is wool and quilter's dream request. So fine thread. And I think we mentioned, and I read about this, that to get that real pop, out of the, these elements, that typically long armors, especially if it's going to be for like a show or something, or if the client, I guess, requests it, they'll do 2 battings. So they might do like a cotton or a poly cotton like base, and then on top of that a wool batting. And then once they do the quilting, the dense stuff recedes, and then the stuff that's not super tightly quilted then really pops up. So I think it sounds like that is indeed what she did here to make these things just pop right off. She said that, I remember that we mentioned the Statler, and I thought it was a different brand, but apparently the Statler is a Gamel. So Gamel is one of the big names in long arms. They're the big, the big honkin' long arms, like the kind of like professional long arms. They're the kind of thing that they're pricey. People that buy them are typically going in, because it's their business versus, I want a long arm quilts for myself and my friends. Not to say you couldn't run a business with any kind of long arm, but I think the Gamels tend to be like, I don't know, I guess it's sort of the difference between, say, like a hardcore sport utility vehicle and, say, a CRV. You don't know cars, I'm sorry, but... So what she says here is the Statler is a Gamel computerized machine utilizing Creative Studio software and hardware. So the software literally, and you'll see this in the video where they literally kind of tell the software, like, this is the size of the quilt and this is where I want things to go. And then they program it in and say, like, this area is the border and you're going to do this border stitch, or this design in the border. And I mean, it's amazing that it does this stuff. She goes on to say, let's see. Software is used to design, place, edit, and customize patterns to stitch out. And Nova long arm machines use Mach 3 software, and Handy Quilter, Grace, and APQS machines often use IntelliQuilter software. So there's all these different software programs, which I didn't realize. I mean, it makes sense. Everybody, each of the manufacturers would have, use their own thing. But software development is its own, thing. And so it also makes sense that some of them, would use the same software as well. So anyway, I mean, you think about just, you've got this hardware, the mechanics of this thing, and then you've got this, I mean, it's a computer. It's a giant computer that does its own thing when you let it. So she says, for the custom quilting, with the computer and robotic software interfaced with a long arm machine, one positions the physical sew head and needle over the quilt or quilt block. Each corner of a block is marked and sends physical coordinates from the sew head to the computer software layout page. And we'll look at the video and see this. The pattern is digitally laid into the boundary of coordinates, and subsequently the machine stitches this. And so then she says the dazzling thing about this quilt is that the stippling and feathers were sewed by manually maneuvering the long arm sew head in what is called free motion quilting. So that's when you see the long arms, they have handles on them, so they can be doing their thing on their own, or you can hold onto those handles and do your own thing, right? So yeah, and it's just one of those things that it's like that 10,000 hours of practice thing. Like you have to practice it and practice it and practice it, and you eventually get very good at this. And she mentioned, that maybe people with good handwriting have a good muscle memory for this. But I think I've talked to just enough long armers to know that this is something that they've practiced for a long time to get good at it. And they draw out designs. They put a lot more work into it. They make it look easy. They make it look like they just put this quilt on the frame and are like, do and quilt it out. But they put a lot of energy and time and practice into doing this. So then Druid asked the brilliant question of how long does it take a long armer to do their work? And she said that, she remembers her sister did the quilting on 2 of the foundry quilts for Quilt Folk. And I haven't had a chance to ask Mary if, she knows how many hours it took. But, this kind of stuff can take a long time, in a custom quilted piece. She said that she collaborated closely with Mary on the one quilt. And let me see. I can launch this. So this one was the Rebecca quilt. And let's see if there's a close-up of it. Of course, the spaces that were quilted are white. So that is kind of difficult to see. Well, maybe this one. Yeah. So, I mean, look at this. If you remember, if you didn't know about the Foundry, what the Quilt Folk Foundry is, it's a project that Mary Fawn's kind of spearheaded, and it's sort of going on its own now. But she was sourcing blocks, orphan blocks, and unquilted vintage and antique quilt tops. And so this one, so it's circa 1850 to 1870. And then it was custom quilted on a long arm in 2023. So that is the kind of stuff that can be done. And I mean, honestly, look at the price. A lot of work goes into that. And then she also did one that was called Fern. And I'm looking to see... Mary did this blog post about Fern, but I don't see a good close-up of the quilting on this one. I don't think. Yeah, that's not it. So anyway, that one was an edge-to-edge Marie thing. So, and that makes sense to me that this one was just kind of an all-over pattern. So I thought that was pretty cool. And then she sent me a couple of things. So you could see this. This is a pattern. This is what some of these things might look like, when they're, I think when you buy an Oliver pattern to put in, it's like it's a specific type of file, but it's essentially like a picture, and it would have all these points mapped out in it. So, but this would be the schematic of it. So that's what that a particular design might look like, but that's an all over. So you're going to tell the machine, like, stitch this out. And let me see, we go back. Uh-oh. I think I may have lost my... Where'd it go? Meh. There we go. Then this is a picture of all that stitched out. So I don't know how well is that coming across my screen. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Oh, look at that. That's that pattern stitched out. And, an all-over pattern doesn't have to be simple. It can be as something as complex as this. But think about this, luckily, the machine in this particular pattern would be able to do it on its own. You tell it, here's one end of the quilt, here's the end of the quilt, top and bottom, go to it. But if you had to custom do this, oh my God, I can't even imagine, all of these different movements. You don't want to have to stop and start, the way that you might be able to do if you're hand quilting. So you kind of have to think about, like, if I go from this paisley and it's got this feathery thing in the middle of it and these circles on the outside, and then I want to go over to make a flower or a swirl, like, where do you do that? Because you don't backtrack on your quilting. You go on to the next thing. So anyway, that's it's exciting stuff. It's really interesting. So, hey, Robin. Everyone's home today. Yeah. Oh, hey, JB. Oh, you guys have been talking. Ah. Frank the cat made an appearance. Okay. Yeah. That one was pebbles, and stippling is that little wiggly like thing. Yeah. Ooh, potato salad. Nom 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 nom. I think I mentioned last week, my son works in sales, furniture sales. So today, of course, being Memorial Day, is a big sale for them. And then my husband is a park manager. So, of course, parks, things are going on there today. So that is why it does not matter to me. Marianne, hey. This has been a long time. It's good to see you, lady. Is it done with something like... Yeah, so what I was just showing is something that our friend Dee Marie sent. And this is work that her sister has done. And I'm thinking what I just showed was her sister's work too. Dee Marie, if you're around and want to comment. I know sometimes I think she watches the videos on demand maybe, so... But I think all of her work is done on a Stadler, which is a gamel, a gamel. It's Gammil, I think. So yeah, this is the Cadillac, or the super SUV of the quilting machines. So, would you guys like to see the video? Like I said, I'm gonna sort of skip a big middle part in this video because it's about a 20-minute video, I think. Yeah, I know. It's just beautiful. I'm in awe of like really good long arming, because I guess it's kind of, I never want to say anything bad about other people's work in quilting, but I've been to some quilt shows and I've seen kind of, an edge to edge design that was kind of not super great. And again, it was my assumption that that's what those were just an edge to edge design that but they were not very dense, and it's just kind of, it's not super pretty. But then you've got these really beautiful designs that, whether they're an edge to edge program thing or if it's custom work, are just like blow you away. So let us look at this. Let me put us back on the other screen. So, oh crud, I was gonna, let's exit full screen for a second so I can give you guys the video link, and you guys know the rules. Go watch this in its entirety. It's a very good video. And make sure you follow and like, because that's how the socials work. It's how people do their thing. So anyway, this is, oh shoot, now I'm forgetting the name of her channel. Declutter Quilting. And this is, and like I said, this is about, not so much really about the long arming, but about how much this quilt costs, like, to make. And I'm pretty sure she made the quilt. So, you're absolutely right, JB. Yeah, if you pick something that, I like bears, let's just do something with bears. And it doesn't look good, it's kind of meh. And I also love the fact, and I think I might have mentioned this too, that the Baltimore Applique Society recently had a long armor as our speaker, our monthly speaker. And she talked about, long arming quilt tops, vintage quilt tops and stuff, and the idea that you don't always have to be bound by the block. You can do things that create secondary patterns and just all kinds of cool stuff. So, all right, so let's watch some of this, and I'm going to skip ahead, and of course I'm going to do the pausing and whatnot so that this doesn't become a copyright issue. So, and hopefully I have my desktop audio on. Let's see, I think so. Yeah, okay. So hopefully you guys can hear this too. So this is the backing. And you see she's putting up prices.
Welcome to my channel. This is Deborah Clutter. In today's episode, I'm going to show you.
Her name is Deborah Clutter, and so I think that's why her channel is called Declutter, and I love that. I think, it's great when somebody has a name like cake that they can make cute into a business thing.
you how I go about long arming this quilt, and you're going to see in the footage the dimensions of the quilt, and I'm going to give you some prices on how much it cost me to make this quilt, and then how much it cost me, or how much it would cost you.
Also, this little boogie board thing she has is kind of cool. I've seen these before, but never a little one like this.
You to long arm this quilt if you had it long armed, and then if you wait till the end, I'll show you
Like
how
it's
much
magnetic.
the whole project cost.
Okay, this is the part that killed me because, frankly, electric scissors. Just looking at them, I just want to throw them in the garbage. But her electric scissors must work really good because she zips around. It's amazing.
So right now I'm getting ready to cut my batting, and I just usually roll it out on the floor. This is a 120-inch wide batting. I cut the batting about 68 inches. The quilt is 60.5 inches wide, so I cut the batting.
And if you're wondering how this cut of batting can cost $20, it's because she obviously buys batting in bulk because she's a long armor. And typically, like, they're these massive honkin' rolls of batting that long armors buy. I've seen them, and, like, literally when they have them delivered, it's like having furniture delivered. It's it's like a big roll.
Batting about 8 inches bigger.
So watch how she's loading into this on here.
If you'd like to make a quilt that's similar to this one, there is a link in the description on how to make the striped block. The rest of the blocks are just 12.5 inch squares, so pretty simple to make. I'm just trying to decide what color I want, so I think I'll choose this variegated and maybe a solid color and see how it looks.
And look at all those beautiful threads. Yes, you're absolutely right, Marianne.
So now I'm just auditioning the two threads I chose and see which one is going to work the best.
I think they both look pretty good. Gee.
So now I'm getting ready to wind some bobbins. So I think I'm going to wind 5 bobbins.
Also, this lady must have some major 3D printing chops because she's got a ton of 3D printed stuff she uses. Like, it's her own design, I guess. Or, whatever. So people that are this technological and have, like, the big studio space, I'm like, I'm so in awe. Yeah, so the thing about the electric scissors, every time I've bought a vintage, I probably have about 5 pairs of electric scissors, and God knows none of them work, I don't think. But it seems like you buy somebody's sewing basket from a certain period of time, they're going to have some of those electric scissors. My mom had some, and so it's got to be like Montgomery Ward's, Penny's, all the places were selling them, like in the 70s, I guess. So, oh, batting scissors. Are those the ones that are like the blades of the scissors look strange? Round up to angle down. Okay. I'm hacking out batting with like just my regulars, like.
In the end, I think I only wound 4, so I really don't have a lot of this thread. So
I don't know if this comes with the
use it all.
I don't know if this comes with the long arm or what, but this is a thread like a bobbin winder. This is like a separate electronic bobbin winder. And I mean, I know that you can buy these kind of things, but this one's like professional looking. This isn't that little simplicity thing that costs like $30.
All or what? If I do, I'll just have to improvise.
Yeah, that's some real serious.
So I'm getting ready to change out the thread. The new thread I'm putting on is made by Superior Threads, and it's a variegated. I think it's a rainbow, and it comes in 2,000 yard spools.
2,000
so
yards.
I used a little bit of it. We'll see if I have enough.
Okay, so the handy quilter comes with separate bobbin winders. Okay, these are
So
things
the last
I don't
bobbin I
know.
used was Omni thread, and it's very linty, as you can see. So I got to clean it out. I know there's lint all over my machine. And it's really hard to oil this with one hand.
Yeah,
If you're
I'm gonna
interested,
skip over
leave me
some
a
of this
comment.
stuff. Oh, this was interesting. This little gadget.
And I want it to read somewhere close to 200. If it's a little less, that's fine.
Now, I mean, this is something you can do with your own machine if you have this type of bobbin or bobbin case. Now, again, I'm assuming that is some kind of gadget specific to long arms, but I mean, I love that. Marianne. Okay, so is that gauge, I guess that's just something that you can buy, as a long armor? Oh, you have a bobbin tension gauge for your featherweight. See, I had never seen one of these things before, and I've always been like, the test where you hold your bobbin case and you pull the thread out and you kind of just let it go. And if it goes slowly or doesn't really move, that's kind of the test. Like, you don't want it to just go boom, but you also don't want it to be like, you just want it to smoothly, That's how I've known to test for tension. Fascinating. Okay. I learn something new all the time. Look at her drawers of stuff.
Those are all my free-wound bobbins in the drawer.
Free-wound bobbins. Look at all that.
So I'm using a size 18 needle. And I just need to change the needle real quick.
Now, from what I understand, long arms, and I actually use specialty needles because I have a Janome Pro. Oh, if you can lift it off and it doesn't drop, it's too tight. It only needs to stand up. Okay. Right, Molly? I mean, this is a lot. This is like car mechanics, right? Like this is like rebuilding a carburetor sort of level of stuff. But I have a Janome 1600P, which is like a professional machine, and it just goes like really fast. And so you have to use more heavy duty needles, right? So, okay, long arm needles have a round shank. And this is interesting. You'll see her doing the needle and she has a little trick. And I'm assuming it's something you buy,
The magnet you see on the needle helps me align the needle into the correct position.
Yeah, so she puts
now
that little
I'm getting
thing.
ready to test the tension and make sure the top tension is looking good. And these are just magnets I made. And there's a little steel bar in there, so I can just attach it quickly and test my tension.
Yeah, so she's got like all of these little doodads and things that she's created herself.
All right, I didn't have to change any of the tension on the top.
Looks pretty cool to
This
me.
is the quilt design I came up with, and it has a edge to edge or a continuous pattern for the border, and
So
then
I'm going to
it has
skip ahead a little bit here because she gets into like the placement.
The plain block is on straight, and then I just move it down to the bottom because I want to put my
see all this
little
rolling and
guide that I
unrolling.
made on to make sure I know exactly how wide the quilt's going to be as I'm going.
So yeah, this is
And you
amazing
can
to
see
me.
at the top, this total for this quilt top was $77 to make. And the borders
And
on
see
it are a
she's doing
10-inch
here?
border on the top.
She's like tacking
and a
it down.
6-inch border on the sides, and the blocks are 12 inches.
And that's something that,
Getting ready to put on.
if you're hand quilting or you're quilting on like a domestic machine, you go from the middle out because all of the stuff you do, particularly with hand quilting, all of the stuff you're doing can be, sort of pushing a little bit. And even with a domestic machine and a walking foot, you still are kind of pushing things out a little bit. And so you really need, you got to start in the middle because you want things to expand like, not all to one side, and then all of a sudden you realize you have no backing and batting under one part of your quilt. But it seems to me with long arming, you really just have to have things like really, really flattened out and very smooth. You don't want any what they call fullness. And what fullness means is basically the darn thing doesn't lay flat, right? So I think that's a lot of what she's, kind of doing as she was laying everything out. But again, she made this quilt top, so I know that, her point is she knows what's going to happen here. But you can see, so she's doing her running total.
I want to start my quilting by doing the border, so I'm going to go ahead and draw my boundary.
So this is what
I'm
she's
using the
drawing
head
a
of my
boundary.
machine to draw out my boundary around the border. Okay, there's what my boundary looks like.
So look at that.
And
So she basically took the stitch head, or the part that's doing the stitching, and she drew all around there. And now it's telling the computer screen. I mean, it's the computer. This thing is a computer. And it's telling it like what that dimension is. It knows. That's crazy. So, quilts made by friends with a machine. Yeah, baggy, floppy. Loose threads everywhere. Yeah, I have heard some stories from long armors, and they're like, this thing looks like an umbrella tent.
Click on that new one and go to repeat.
So yeah, she's basically
You go
showing
fill inside,
the specifics of her
and
software.
it's going to fill everything inside, and then I'm going to go ahead and start quilting.
Yeah, so she basically told it, you're only going to quilt in this area, and this is what you're going to quilt. And it's doing its thing. Look at that. It's amazing.
Okay, the first row is done, and it doesn't look too
and
bad.
so
I had
I'm gonna
just
skip
a
way
little
ahead
bit of
here.
problem to a boundary.
And you see she's starting to do the blocks now. And there's a whole bunch of clicking and stuff that she's doing.
From there, I can go ahead and click on the first boundary. This block. It's not like you can really see it. I mean,
so she said this is approximately 15 minutes per row.
But I think if I do it.
So approximately 15 minutes per row, and this is specifically, this pattern she's chosen. And so I couldn't really tell what the pattern is in the striped blocks. I think it's just some bubbles and stuff, but then the plain blocks is like a lotus pattern. Sort of looks like a lily pad and some watery kind of stuff. So
do it again in the future, I will take it all the way out to the edge. It is 64 degrees down here in my basement.
64 degrees.
Time to turn on the space heater. Extra fabric, and
and then this is her cutting it off.
Much nicer.
Cutting it off the machine.
All right, here's what the quilt looks like. Let's recap.
Yeah.
The quilt was 60 by 80 inches, so 400 or 4,800 inches times 0.025 for the quilting would equal $120. Your quilting would have cost $120. At least that's what I would have charged. You can charge less, 0.23 if you want. It depends on whoever's doing your quilting. But at 0.025, that's like $20 an hour. It took approximately 6 hours to do the quilting. 30 minutes setup, 1 hour stitch in the ditch, half an hour for designing the quilt, 2 hours on the border, and 2 hours on the blocks.
So 6 hours.
Here's the front.
So, and that was really the primary question, was how long does it take versus how much does it cost? So yeah, Marianne, I think what she's saying is like $120 is probably the bottom, like the base, the minimum wage, I think. It doesn't sound like, so she was using this like 0.25, and then she said 0.23 is a possible. So yeah, I think you're right. Like it does seem to be kind of a base price, like maybe it's the friends and family price. I don't know. So anyway, that kind of answers our question to make that quilt, which had essentially an edge-to-edge design on the borders, and then each block was something different. And then, she had kind of all that sort of, I don't know what you'd call it, like telling the machine what all the points are, the kind of the setup. So it took her 6 hours. And this person, I mean, she's a professional. You look at what she's got. This lady didn't start long arming like yesterday. So my guess is it would probably take a newer long armor a little bit more time. So, okay. So Molly says 0.25. Yeah. Ooh, a king sized. Yeah. That sounds about right. My mom had, gosh, it's probably been 20 years ago. She had something made, and it wasn't quilt. She just had a bedspread done. She had, it was the fabric that matched her drapes, and she wanted, she could not find that, say, in just a, wherever you'd buy stuff for, for home decor. So she decided she wanted her own. So she bought the drapery fabric and had it made into a bedspread. And I want to say she paid about $300, maybe $250, $300 for it. So yes, done is always preferable to the UFO pile. Absolutely. Oh, Molly, you too are a reverend of the Universal Life Church. I am as well. I have married exactly one couple, and they got divorced last year. It's like, thank God, thanks guys. You made my I'm a 0 for 0, or a 1 for 1. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So, I just got an email from them recently. I don't know. I can't remember. I mean, I think it was just like, oh, we've got, we've updated our website, and do you have all of the officiant things you need? Like, I could get my officiant car placard, my officiant press pass, my officiant robes. So, yeah. Well, that, my friends, is what I know about long arming now. And thank you to Dee Marie for sending this to us. She's always great at finding me like little, videos and little snippets of data. So I really appreciate that. Sending us these things. And let me make sure that I got everything I wanted to show you guys. I think I did. Yeah. Yep. All right. So, are you guys ready for our friend MacIver? Yeah, I was thinking about the Chintz this weekend, and I was like, yeah, chintzy Chintz. And I remembered this morning I meant to take pictures, but I promise by next Monday we'll have pictures of all the Chintz plates in this book, the color ones. I was slipping through here. There's one I don't think is in here, and if it is, it's not a color plate, but there's this one called Defenders of the Nest that's really like a famous Chintz print, and it's got, birds in a nest in the middle. So, all right. So, we are on chapter 2. And, oh, geez, there's an ad break on right now. Not that you guys aren't all subscribed. But this will be a chance for me to have a little sip. So, as a reminder, the book we're reading right now is The Chintz Book by MacIver Perci. And despite the fact his name sounding Scottish, I think I have determined that he's probably just a posh Englishman. I tried to find out some information about him, and I really still, the only thing I can find about him is all the books he wrote. This particular one was written in 1923, or published in 1923, and it appears that, I think most of the books he wrote were early 20th century. I can't even find, birth and death dates for this guy. So he... he's still in the public consciousness as far as the books he wrote, but apparently anything about him is going to take a little bit more research. But Marianne Tea Cake, actually, I'm glad you're here, and because I wanted to ask a person in the UK, are you familiar with him? It's MacIver Perci, and he's written about fans, and he's written about oak furniture, I think, And I'm trying to remember what else. I mean, it was all this, like, antique stuff. And he's writing at the turn of the 20th century, early 20th century. And this is when, we have this colonial revival going on. The first colonial revival. The second colonial revival, of course, was in the 70s, coinciding here in the U.S. with the bicentennial, our bicentennial. But yeah, I don't know. When I say colonial revival, I'm talking U.S. centric here. I don't know. I mean, the types of furniture and things that were being collected, the antiques at this time. I think this is kind of maybe similar across the English-speaking world at this time, I'm guessing. I mean, it really seems to me that many of the things that were popular here in the U.S. were also popular across the pond, but I could be making guesses. So anyway, we read the preface and the introductory chapter on Thursday, so we're getting to the chapter 2. So back in to talk about Indian chintz. And chintz was spelled Chints in this case. So, again, the Chintz Book by MacIver Perci. Chapter 2, Indian chintz and how they are made. The earliest chintzes used in Europe came from India, and it is just as well to have a clear idea of what they were and how they were made. For they were the models which the European printers of the 17th and 18th centuries kept before them as a counsel of perfection. Though they used other methods in producing a similar effect. Exactly the same results they could not obtain, but they got as near to them as they could. The economy of time affected by printing the outline from wood blocks, which is the European way, is of course enormous, but the Indian process of drawing it by hand over a stencil guide gave a far finer and more flexible line. And these decorated panels are as far above the block printed cottons of the English calico printer as the best of those are in front of the ordinary machine print of the present day. Long before Indian chintz were imported into England, European paintings and prints on cloth and linen had been used for household decorations, but they faded and dulled with time, while the chintz only improved with use, getting brighter and more beautiful each time they were washed. Well, that's interesting. I don't know how that happens. How does something become brighter the more it's washed? So while the fashionables used them and merchants made fortunes by importing them, the craftsmen and dyers sought for the secret of their manufacture. Gradually, bit by bit, Europeans learnt some of the Eastern methods and adapted them to their purposes, but the whole process has never been carried out in the production of anything approaching the elaboration of the finest Indian chintz. Said by somebody who doesn't do his own laundry. Yeah. The beauty of old Indian painted calicos lies first of all, in their color, which is the first thing to strike the eye. Lovely rich tones of rose, from full crimson to delicate shell pink, purple fading to palest lilac, blue of the softest, fullest hues. And to these there were added originally rich green and a citron yellow, though they have faded by now. And this is funny, this is something that Molly and I kind of agree on, is that the colors of chintz just don't do anything for us. But the way this is being described, it's like, the way he describes it, I'd be like, heck yeah, I'm into chintz. But I'm like, no, the chintz I've seen doesn't look like that. The reds are like a madder red, that rusty red, and not like a bright crimson. But he's using the word crimson. So, I don't know, MacIver. I don't know what chintz you're looking at. It's sorry, Marianne. We just don't love chintz. But we can't exactly put our finger on it other than the color is an issue. And there's a lot going on in a chintz. Although, my theory is more is more. All right. The glorious color was used to give expression to designs of infinite variety, favored among them being the enormous tree of life patterns, which adorned so many of the palampours imported by the East India companies, English, French, and Dutch. The handsomest and largest of these have majestic, broad trunks, displaying in profusion flowers of bewildering variety. Others are crowded with figures, or large birds of wonderful plumage are perched amongst exotic foliage and strange plant growths. Strange plant growths. Then, on drawing nearer, one finds that in addition to the broad decorative effect of color and subtle and intricate design, the whole thing has a wonderful added beauty of minute and exquisite detail, and that the spaces which seemed one flat sweep of color are in fact nothing of the sort, but that every bit of the whole tinted surface is built up of a wonderfully delicate patterning, though so subsidiary to the general scheme that it does not interfere with it at all. So we've got a pro-chintz and an anti-chintz contingents here in the stream. Oh shoot, I lost my... Every leaf, every flower is full of tiny markings, spots, or shadings, sometimes corresponding to the veinings that are found in nature, and at other times seemingly inconsequent and only added to fill and break up the surface. We are now so used to detail carried out by machinery that unless the wonder of these cottons, that they are all accomplished by handwork, is pointed out, the true significance of these beauties may be passed over. The time and patience employed in carrying them out must have been enormous. And I do believe that for sure. A Dutch 17th century writer amusingly describes the making of them thus. And this is from, so this Dutch writer is Havart, The Rise and Fall of Coromandel, 1693. Quoted Hadaway, W.S., Cotton Painting and Printing. So, a Dutch 17th century writer amusingly describes the making of them thus. The painting of chintz proceeds in the most leisurely manner, similar to the crawling of snails, which appear to make no headway. Anyone who would represent patience could use one of the chintz painters of Palikol as a model. So apparently chintz was a slow process. In order to obtain these wonderful effects in a fast dye, and that the colors are produced by permanent dyes, not pigments, is the essential quality of a true chint. The most elaborate processes were necessary. There is extant a most interesting account written by a Jesuit priest, Father Cordu, and I want to say Cordu is mentioned in the last chapter, to his headquarters in Europe and dated from the East Indies, 1742, which gives a description of the art as practiced then, which, as a matter of fact, differs not at all in its essentials from the way in which Pliny, and I believe this is Pliny the Elder, describes it as having been carried out in Egypt in his time. Father Cordu begins by saying that he had been asked many times to communicate any discoveries that he might be able to make in the part of India to which he had been sent as a missionary, and at last he has had a little leisure and employed it in learning the way the Indians make those beautiful cloths, which are objects of trade with the companies established to extend commerce. These cloths are principally of value because of the vivacity and the lasting qualities of their colors, which, far from deteriorating when washed, only become more beautiful. Well, perhaps I need to get my own chintz and treat it as such until it becomes more beautiful and more bright and more lovely. He says that he puts down the failure of European scientists and work people, not to their lack of skill, but to the fact that India possessed ingredients, and above all water, of a special kind, which contributed to the beauty of their mixture of dyeing and painting. So it's not their skill that makes their chintz so good. It's in the water. Oh, ye people of old. It is not necessary here to follow the Reverend Father through all the minute details, which are of interest only to those who have some acquaintance with the technique of the industry. The account may be briefly summarized thus, and before I read it, we say, let's see, the whole account, which, though full of interest to those who wish to study the technique, might weary the general reader, is given in literal translation in the appendix. So the account may be briefly summarized thus. The half-bleached cloth, he calls it linen, but none of the Indian chintzes are worked on anything but cotton. Wait for this, you guys. This is interesting. So the half-bleached cloth is first soaked in a mixture of buffalo's milk and the fruit of a plant called cadou, C-A-D-O-U. And I did the other day look up cadou, and I don't remember being able to figure out exactly what it was. It is dried, then again damped and smoothed or burnished to give it a fine surface. The buffalo milk taking the place of the size, which is used on paper to prevent colors from running and blotting. So the buffalo milk was a sizing. And at first I thought the buffalo milk might be what gives the chintz that glaze, but it is not. When the cloth has been prepared and is lithesome and polished enough, the pattern is drawn. The painter sketches his design on paper, and having pierced holes along the principal lines with a needle, he puts the paper over the cloth and passes powdered charcoal over the pricked holes, thus transferring the design to the cloth, which is a way that, up until our modern conveniences, this is the way people transfer designs. So, the past must have smelled really bad. Well, let's hope that buffalo milk dries sort of scentless, and that it was not curdling on the cloth. Lastly, the lines are followed with a paintbrush and color, and the outline is complete. So far, it is just the usual process employed by embroideresses in preparing a piece of needlework. Well, I don't know. Would an embroideress use buffalo milk to prepare her needlework? I don't know. Yes, Marianne, I think we're getting to that point. This just beginning part is like, oh, well, this is no different than like an embroidery. Then all parts which are to be solid black are painted in, and the red outlines for red flowers are also painted. The blue is the first color to be filled in, and it requires elaborate preparation. It is not applied by brush, but by soaking the whole of the cloth in a preparation of indigo. In order to confine the action of the dye to those places where red or green are required, the rest of the surface has to be covered in wax. So that actually surprised me, that chintz were waxed, although it makes sense. The wax is applied on one side only and then placed in the sun for just sufficiently long to melt the wax enough to let it penetrate to the other side. Yeah, resist dyeing. Exactly. The painter now hands the cloth to the blue dyers, who are a special class of work people. And I think that, in India, this I think probably tied up with the caste system in India. The Reverend Father says he inquired whether it would not be simpler to paint the blue parts in with a brush, but the dyer replied that it would be easier, but the color would fly after 2 or 3 washings. The wax is then removed from the cloth by steeping it in boiling water. The cloth is afterwards fully bleached and prepared again with cadou and buffalo milk for the red coloring. And, okay, what it says about cadou is that it is a kind of myrobalan plum. Myrobalan. This word before plum is spelled M-Y-R-O-B-O-L-A-N. So it's a kind of plum, apparently. That did not come up in my searches. In fact, Google kept wanting to respell cadou. And I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know. All right. So before the red is put on, every detail which is intended to be shown as white in the midst of the red is painted with wax. Then in succession, the different preparations for the various shades of color, such as that of the tone of wine lees and all other colors of the red class, are added. It may be mentioned that these paintings are not of the actual color, but of solutions which enable the cloth to absorb the color when put into the dye. So again, there's the mordants. I think that's what he's talking about. The cloth is then boiled in the actual dye, and this brings out the color only on those portions prepared by the preliminary painting. Wow, that's some alliteration. The portions prepared by the preliminary painting. And after the ground has been bleached and cleared as before, the red colors are complete. So I'm wondering what they're using to bleach. You know, what the bleaching is. 'Cause I can't imagine. It's not like bleach like we know it. Which I don't even know. How do they make bleach? I mean, it's a chemical thing. The green and the yellow are the same dye, in the former case painted over blue. Yeah, bleach is chlorine bleach is chlorine. But I think that the generic term of something that whitens fabric can be other things, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. Sunlight, indeed. Sunlight can bleach too. I don't know. Let's see. The green and the yellow are the same dye. In the former case, painted over blue. In the latter, direct on the white cloth. This dye is not permanent and soon disappears when washed with soap. The brushes used by the natives are made of bamboo, pointed and slit up a little way. They fasten a piece of stuff soaked in the required color round the stem and squeeze it as required to make it run. For wax, they use an iron brush, thinner towards the top and fitted with a wooden handle. Round the middle, where there is a bunch of wool soaked in hot wax, which runs down the iron when squeezed. This slight sketch gives some idea of the processes employed, but only very simple examples would be carried out thus. Only simple examples would be carried out based on what we read. Good Lord. In the more elaborate pieces, the flowers were painted 6 to 7 times, with additional details added in wax each time, which of course, when finally submitted to the dye vat, would come out in shades varying from the lightest to the darkest. So yeah, there's a lot of work. I have also omitted the lengthy accounts given by Pere Cordu of the numerous soakings, washings, and beatings which alternate with each process. Added to all this was the preparation of the colors, so that the complexity of the whole process makes us wonder how the method was originally discovered and how it survived the vicissitudes of 2,000 years practically unaltered. Yeah. Yes, right? A fat quarter's worth of fabric would take you forever. Yeah, and I guess the thing is, like, I've seen videos of some of, like, the more modern, chintz making workshops. And, I mean, they have a lot of people that are contributing, and I think it's almost like factory style, like they each have a thing they do. So it can be, sped up. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot that goes into this. Traditionally. Sometimes those decorated cottons are spoken of as Indian prints, but this is a misnomer. Certainly in some of the latter examples, there are portions in which stamps have been used as a shortcut to simplify the work when there are constantly repeated small details. But these are not used in the fine examples, and even in cases where they are used, it is only for insignificant parts. In the 18th century, printed outlines were used on commercial work, and of course, by the 19th century, printing and the use even of coal tar colors had become general. Yes, engraved copper roller print, yes. But even the block printing, I mean, there are still workshops that use the block printing techniques, and I would say that this hand painting, then there was block printing, and then we've got the industrialized methods, but those industrialized methods were not necessarily used, I don't think, until much more recently, in these workshops in India. The great advantage of the use of handwork over machinery is that every part is individual and can be altered to suit the circumstances of its use. And the East India companies soon found a way to have special designs worked out for special orders. Now, if you remember, the last chapter we read, he talked about the Egyptians and how, like, their precursor to chintz were all of those stamps of, like, all the different little shapes, and then they could put them together And I mean, that kind of is what this sounds like to me, that, every part is individual. In many cases, these were artistically inferior to the traditional patterns which had been handed down from father to son. But from a trader's point of view, it no doubt paid them well. Interesting. So some of what we are looking at and thinking is so beautiful was probably the crappier versions. Well, for instance, the Marshal d'Estrie had in 1720 a bed worth 2,000 or 3,000 crowns, with his coat of arms in the middle of the back, which aroused the admiration of Papillon, the great wood engraver, who said of it, "All the ornaments and flowers were beautifully drawn, the colors admirable and charming. This bed furniture was expressly made in the interior of India, though I do not know in which town, from drawings which M. le Marechal had sent." Wouldn't that be nice? Like, I've made some drawings. Please ensure my bed linens match as such. Just as much Chinese porcelain during the 18th century was painted with crests and armorial bearings to the special order of noble families, so similar decoration was applied to the painted calicos, especially for beds and bedspreads. It would, of course, be quite easy for the Indian work people to introduce them as required, tracing the patterns supplied them by means of pouncing in the usual way. So again, that's the poking the holes. East India companies were taste setters for Europe. They commissioned stuff they thought they could sell. Yeah, definitely. And Marianne, what's interesting, because I haven't talked to you in a long time, I was at a retreat recently, and Mary Kay Waldvogel did a really interesting talk about chintz medallions, and that kind of is what set me off on this. I still don't like chintz. I'm not, and that's wrong of me to say. It's not that I don't like it. It doesn't appeal to me, like, to collect it or study it really. But it's fascinating. Like, the history of it is really fascinating, and how it's made, obviously, is fascinating. But so anyway, her lecture was about specifically the medallion prints, and they're a little bit different than this chintz that MacIver is talking about, in that what they think is that they made these medallions that were specific to the fact that people often cut chintz apart and, quilted, used the components. So they started making these medallions that were kind of made of components that could be cut apart. And they think that, I guess when the trade restrictions changed after the Revolutionary War, so we're talking like early 1800s, the thought is that the UK, the English were just like, yeah, we don't want this crap. Let's dump it on the Americans. So in the 1800s, we had these really specific chintz, like medallion pieces, and we did interesting things with them. They were also doing slightly different things with them in Europe and in England. But it was definitely thought that what we got, for this very specific type of decorator piece, were like the dumped stuff, like that Europe was tired of it, or England was tired of it, so America got it like 20 years late. It was interesting. It was a really interesting history. So using the components that way. So Jared, you mean like cutting up to make the Broadway purse? You prefer like the whole piece? I could see that too. Broadway purse was interesting, and the reason that they did that is really just to make, you've got a chintz panel that may only be, a certain size, but you want it to cover an entire bed. So, they'd cut out those pieces and then spread it all apart, and cut out, all the different, to make like a new design. And it was just, about being, I guess, thrifty. Yes, thrifty in that way. The borders of many of the large palampours imported by the East India Company show evidence of European influence, the design taking the form of festoons of flowers looped up in regular intervals in a formal way, which differs entirely from the unconventional treatment of rambling trails of foliage and flowers, which is found in the native designs. Oh yes, John Hewson. He's an interesting one. Yeah, John Hewson actually came up when we were reading Florence Pito's first book, Historic Quilts, because unfortunately, John Hewson is thought to have basically taken English printing technology and brought it, kind of stolen away with it and brought it here, and had, a huge printing business up in New England, and there's kind of all this historical, I guess it's like kind of like secondary information, but the Hewson Company never, or if they did have sample books, they've never been found. So they think like either he never kept sample books or his sample books got stolen or destroyed or something. So yeah, there's particular ways that people have tried to, not recreate, but kind of piece together what John Hewson prints looked like. And they were supposedly like really brilliant because he was using the English technology. Yeah. Same with the textile mills of Manchester. Yeah. Designs were copied and brought to Lowell. Yep. Industrial espionage. Exactly. Yeah. And the British were not happy. The British were like, you're stealing our technology, Yeah. So besides the large panels, there were also lengths of material printed with all-over designs. Some consisted of endless trails with fine, thin stems bearing the multitude of natural flowers, and others were spotted over with sprays and sprigs of flowers. Others again were ornamented with the pine pattern, and there were an infinity of spots, rosettes, and small formal patterns used, however more for dress than for furniture. There are also many small covers and mats of a great variety of patterns, which are often very lovely. They do not seem, however, to be as fine in color as the larger panels. Many of these show decided... Oh, sorry. I have too much hooked up. You probably heard my desk announcement. Many of these show decided Persian influence and are arranged with a border and a center, the border being of a running design with conventional flowers and the inside filled with a similar trailing design. In the central portion and the four corners, designs with a ground of another color are inserted, which have a very decorative effect. The way in which these differing parts of the pattern are put in is as follows. When the worker lays out the cloth for transferring the design through the pricked holes of the stencil, he carefully covers up the parts where he wishes the medallion or other ornament to come with a mask of paper cut to the exact shape. When he has carried out his all-over pattern, he removes this mask and replaces it with the ornamental stencil, which of course exactly fits the required space. This device enables the painter to fill any sized rectangle with a pattern of individual character with an outfit of comparatively few stencils, as the border, of course, could also be repeated as required to any length. They are not, however, as interesting as those in which the pattern is properly drawn for the exact purpose as it is called on to fulfill, and they seem to be a commercialized form. Like, oh my gosh. Some of this stuff is so detailed, yet nonetheless, it's more commercial. This is a hand-painted Palampore central portion. And so this is just a black and white, but I think it's a pretty good. So you can see in here, there's a little peacock there, or some sort, like maybe it's a pheasant. I don't know. But you see the tree is, you see it coming up through here, but there's so much background stuff going on. Very busy. But, more is more. Okay, where did I leave off? It is difficult to date any Indian chint with accuracy. The designs were traditional, and very likely some are believed to be early are not so in reality.
There appears to be a flatness and breadth of treatment in the earlier work, which the latter lacks, and the colors are perhaps fuller. It is probable that there are very few examples older than the 17th century in existence, and even those are rare. Oh my gosh. John Huston is the 5th great-grandfather of Tina Fey. What do you know? I'm sure that probably came out when she was on, oh gosh, what's, Lewis Henry Gates. I'm blanking on it. It's not Who Do You Think You Are? That's the other one, but, yeah, Lewis Henry Gates show on PBS, the genealogy show. I think Tina Fey was on that. That's probably where that information came from. Finding Your Roots. Thank you. Yeah, that's a good show. I like that one. Henry Louis Gates. Did I say Louis Henry? Yeah, Henry Louis Gates is Skip Gates. He's a fascinating man. Very interesting. Okay, some of them can be dated by the costumes of Europeans depicted on them, having been made to special designs, probably to commemorate certain events, and by special order of the company. In India itself, Mr. G.P. Baker, who has made many inquiries on the subject, found that there were few old examples in the museums and public collections. In Europe, there are several collections in private hands and a number of beautiful examples in the Indian section of the Victoria and Albert Museum. While in France, they have been very much appreciated for years and have been collected by many connoisseurs. Genuine examples are seldom offered for sale, but may sometimes be discovered among the flotsam and jetsam which gathers in every old country house. And if MacIver Percival is not some posh English, like, I just picture this man being like, you know, one of the guys on Antiques Roadshow or something. Oh, wow, we found a piece in the flotsam and jetsam of our country house, but... Yeah, so, Marianne, you can probably find this book pretty easily. I bought mine on Abe Books, and I want to say it was probably only about $20, but I ended up having to pay like $15 for shipping because it comes from the UK. I don't think I found any copies in the US, so you'd probably be able to find it cheaply, but there's how his name is spelled if you're interested. MacIver Percival. It is interesting to know how to distinguish between genuine old work and the modern copies executed by means of the printing press. If there is a repeating design, find two parts which are approximately the same. If the details are exactly the same in every particular, it has been printed and is a modern reproduction. If it is a large panel, say of bedspread size with a large tree pattern, if a modern one, it will be printed, and through the center will, of course, not show a repeat. The border will give scope for comparison. There will also be the fact that the execution is infinitely coarser and the material of poorer quality. The colors incline to garishness where the originals are rich. If the green is a solid color, it is modern. In old examples, the yellow has almost always faded, leaving only a soft, slightly greeny blue, with just a trace of the yellow remaining. In genuine old Indian cottons with a white ground, unless they are of very perfect workmanship, there is often a very faint network over the background of thin thread-like lines intersecting at irregular intervals. This, of course, is the wax, right? This effect is caused by the slight cracking of the wax used to protect the white ground while the blue is being dyed. There is the kind of Japanese ornamental dyeing in which these crackle lines are deliberately produced. There's also a Southeast Asian technique called batik that does the same thing. But the effect is not the same. And so I think what he's saying, those crackle lines are just, you can't help it because wax is just, it's firm and it does, if you ball up the fabric in any way, it cracks. But that's not the goal, to have those crackles, whereas in batik and other types of, I'm thinking he's probably talking about some like shibori dyeing techniques that, Japanese ornamental dyeing. those cracks are meant to be there, so they like really work the the wax to be crackly. Some finely colored 18th century work has a printed outline with hand fillings. So it is a great pity that there are not more good reproductions of Indian cottons of the better kinds suitable for furnishing use, as they are quite the most useful type. There are, however, some very good copies, the worst thing against many of them being that they are overglazed. Chintz should be shiny, but not too shiny, if required to take the place of old materials for furnishing. The old chintz always were executed on a plain, smooth material, not one with raised spots woven into it. Raised spots. You know, and what's interesting is, and maybe we're getting to it, but maybe not, how do they do the... He does not explain how do they do the glazing. Like, what is the glaze? What is it made out of? An interesting form of dyeing, though more used for hand and neck kerchiefs than for decorative purposes, was the bandana style. The effect, which is that of white rings surrounding a tiny spot of the ground color, was obtained by tying waxed thread tightly around small portions of the material so as to prevent the dye getting to it. The spots were either broadcast over the material or arranged close together to form lines and patterns. This method was often used on silk as well as cotton, and sometimes only the border was dipped in the dye, thus giving a white spotted colored border surrounding a pure white center. Well, that sounds delightful, but it also sounds like some of the Japanese dyeing techniques. So, oh no, we've got a tornado watch. A tornado watch starting 2 minutes ago. Alrighty. The whole tone of Old Indian chintz at the present day is a rich yet soft rose color with foliage and other parts in bluey green and a quiet shade of blue. It must be remembered, however, that these shades are only arrived at after years of use and constant washing, and when a room is being furnished with the idea of reproducing the original effect, as for instance a stage representation of a room in the late 17th or 18th century, a cotton should be chosen which gives the original tones before the yellow had vanished. Oh, we all had that weather yesterday. Yeah, I think that cold front is coming from your direction, Druid. Thanks a lot. Of course, the yellow over the blue gave the greens, but being the most fugitive of the dyes, it often vanished after 2 or 3 washings, leaving the coloring perhaps more charming but different. The other shades, as Père Cordoue points out, are improved by washing and quite unfadable. I still don't understand this. Improved by washing. How did they get brighter when you wash them? I mean, because it's the yellow goes away. Oh gosh, Marianne. Yeah, it's not a super expensive book. Yeah, I think this was a pretty well-produced book. And I'm also curious to know if there was a cover, like, did it have a dust jacket? Because my copy does not, but interested to see when you get yours what you think. I think one thing that you may not know, if you haven't been here in a while, is it's got beautiful color plates in it, which I have not been showing because I promised to photograph them, and I have not done so. So that's what they look like. So, and you know, these are like pretty bright looking in my opinion. That one in particular does not, yeah, it looks like a chintz, but yeah. Must be something that comes out with the washing. Yeah. The main sources of the actual colors were the roots of a native plant containing a coloring substance similar to madder for red, pink, and lilac, and such colors, and indigo for the blue. The Indians had many superstitions about the methods of preparing the different substances which they employed. One ingredient much used was sour rice water. Sour rice water. I'm assuming this is a fermented water from rice. Which was, of course, a cheap, in fact, really worthless liquid, and at the disposal of anyone who happened to want it. For for there had grown up a kind of taboo about it. And, to quote again from Les Lettres the edification letters. I don't know what Les Lettres Edifiantes. I don't know. There is a ridiculous superstition among these Gentiles on the subject of kanji, or rice water. Ridiculous superstition. It is that anyone can use it himself on any day of the week, but on Sunday, Thursday, and Friday, they refuse to give it to anyone who is short of it because they say it would drive their God out of the house. Oh gosh. The water you get after washing your rice is actually great for cleaning, but only lasts a day. It stinks after that. Well, that must be this. Sour rice water must have been saved for longer than a day. When the water of certain wells and ponds was considered as being essential to perfection of color and absolute fastness of the dyes, though possibly this idea was based on some mineral ingredient which actually was present in the water and not merely on idle fancy or superstition. So I wonder do you know why is rice water good for cleaning? Is it because it's gritty, or is there something about the rice? From watching a J-drama. Oh, the things you learn. So the grit, yeah. I'm wondering if it's kind of like if you've ever used like baking soda as like a scouring agent. You just kind of make a paste out of it, and it doesn't scratch, but it's good for getting like baked on stuff. I actually burned something in a pan the other day, and I used a little baking soda and dish soap to paste to get it off there. So, well, that was chapter 2. I think I'm gonna stop there. I think MacIver, he's turning out to be fun. So I know I've shown a few of these. I keep showing them until I actually get them. Isn't that beautiful? See, like that's very punchy. Like that is a very bright orangey red and a very bright pinky red. And look at those blues and greens. I just feel like all the print I've ever looked at, the Chintz prints, are not as pretty as that. So, let's see let me look at my other chat so that I can read everything that Drew had just said. So, rice water can be used for cleaning because it is starchy and slightly acidic, making it effective at scrubbing and cleaning smooth surfaces. The starchy sediment left over from rinsing rice before cooking can act as an abrasive, while the acidity can help clean mineral deposits. Rice water can also absorb oil, which can help you use less soap. Huh, interesting. You'll learn something every day. Thank you, AI. Thank you, AI, for making up that fascinating description. I'm going to assume that it's accurate. So, a great degreaser. I would have never, ever guessed that. Hey, Arlene. How are you? So interesting. Very, very interesting. So, I'm going to have to... I just ate some rice this week. I did not rinse it. I just, sometimes you need to rinse your rice so that it's not sticky. But the things I cook tend to work best with sticky rice. So that's what I cook. But yeah, that's interesting to know. So yeah, sorry, you don't rinse your rice either. That's good. Like, am I doing something bad not rinsing my rice? Hey, Kenny, how are you? The gang's all here. I hope that you've gotten some of your unpacking done this weekend and low stress. Got caught up cleaning the kitchen, yeah. Molly, all the Asian dramas you watch. I love it. Well, you guys, that was all I had for today. So yeah, check out the piece about long arming at the beginning, guys, if you missed that part. I learned some things today. Yeah, it's so good to see you guys. And Marianne, I'm so glad to see you. I haven't seen you in a while. So, oh my gosh, Kenny. Your cats need a spanking. I'm one to talk though. Mine are real brats. They do crazy stuff too. But turned on a burner. Well, the more you know. You are absolutely right, Molly. I do need such a thing. Yes. Thank you, Druid. With remembrance in your heart. Absolutely. Oh. Oh. Well, then it was your fault, Kenny, for putting a cardboard box there. You're just asking for it. You put a cat trap somewhere, you're gonna get exactly what you expect. Oh, I'm so, yeah, Marianne, I'm so glad. I hope you'll have a chance to stop by again soon. Yeah, that seems like a bit of drama, and especially if there's a box there. Ooh. Well, you guys, as a reminder, I will not be here on Thursday because of the Penn Dry Goods show. But hopefully we will get some pictures, and I don't anticipate that we'll do a pop-up just because there's a lot of stuff going on, and we have dinners and whatnot. So probably I'll just be bringing back some stories and maybe a few little souvenirs because, of course, there's the antique show there, and I'm just about tapped out. But you know, there's always sometimes a little trinket. So no stream, and I think that was pretty much it. You know, we're starting the Mary Wither wax along, so don't forget about that if you're doing that. Yeah. So thank you, Robin. Yeah, we'll have fun. It'll be fun. So yeah, have a wonderful week, you guys. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow if you're participating in quilt nerding. Otherwise, have a wonderful week. And I will see you guys, if not tomorrow, next Monday. So, and I'm going to turn my fan up higher because you see I'm glistening. So you guys have a great week, and thank you so much. And mwah, mwah, mwah. You guys are the best.